So I was down here walking around and I got down into the neighbor's property. So my property's over there. This is his property. He said I could come over here and get deadfall anytime I wanted. So I'm welcomed on his property. I'm not trespassing. This is the edge, the furthest. So like I said, my property's over there. There's a fence line. This is the edge of the property on his other side. You can see the fence line probably right there. And you can see a deadfall has fallen and smashed down the fence. I got a lot of deadfall when I was burning my outdoor heat exchanger. You may recall I had an outdoor heat exchanger I was using to heat the camper. I had a heat exchanger that I built for the camper, and I'm going to show you some footage on this. So I almost feel like I'm getting ready to do a series of videos. In yesterday's video, as well as the day before, I've been discussing our outdoor wood furnace, also called a heat exchanger, outdoor heat exchanger for winter heating. We actually have a fire in it today. It's kind of dying down right now. The wood was really wet. I haven't dried it out. So the idea of it is the blocks create an insulation. And so I'm insulating the entire outside, except for the front, of course, and capturing that heat. And so then I will run, it's not finished. Right now, I have to put a piece of metal for the chimney. That's the chimney output right there. It's upside down, but that goes on top of the stove here. Then I'll put the metal, and then I'll run a chimney up, and then I'll put another layer of bricks around the metal to hold that heat in. And then right here, I will have a piece of ductwork right here where the thermometer and the meat tongs are. That is where the ventilation will go. Right now, as it stands, this is at 200 degrees. And so the heat comes out of here and will enter into the camper, who won't use any type of blower to blow the heat around. It will work automatically. You don't need electric for this system. I used a lot of this deadfall. The heat exchanger was very inefficient. I used up all my firewood that I cut for it within just a couple months, but it kept us warm. I was very proud how well it did. So by January, we moved into the house and we were burning wet wood at that point. As you know, the stove requires a 20% moisture content in the firewood. So if I were to cut this tree down right here, it would take a year. You know, I'd have to split up logs, and they'd split the logs, and then it'd take a year for that wood to dry. If you kept it in a log form or in tree form, it would take several years for that to dry. You got to split it. It's got to be 6 inches or less. And oak, hickory, birch, I think is another one, take a long time to dry. It takes up to a year, sometimes 2 years. I got stuff over in the wood pile now that I cut. The tree fell down in the spring. I started splitting it and cutting it in August. And now it is just at 20%. So I can use it this year, but it's been well over, what, 18 months? Roughly, I don't know. But like I said, there wasn't much drying going on while the tree was in full form. It just fell over, and it took me a couple months to get to it. A lot of people say that they can burn deadfall in these new stoves. So this right here is a perfect example of what they're talking about. Some woman was telling us that they had a problem with their new wood stove. They couldn't get it to stay lit. It was hard to light. Lots of creosote in the chimney. But they got a log that was deadfall, been down for a couple of years, and they were trying to burn that. I tried to explain to the lady that's not going to work. Of course, she wouldn't believe me. I even sent her an article that she could read, but she was adamant that it wasn't the log, it was the stove. There was something wrong with the stove. Well, I can tell you, having owned this stove and trying to burn wet wood and dry wood, there's a massive difference. It's terribly different. It's a nightmare trying to burn wet wood in these new stoves. You can't do it. You would think that this log here would be a perfect example of something that we could burn. It's been down on the ground for how many years now? But I can guarantee you this is wet. What happens is this stuff becomes a sponge after a while. And you can see right here that the bugs are starting to eat into it. I can feel the moisture when I put my hands in there. That's water right there. You might be able to see that it's actually changed in color. I can feel the water. So if you can feel water in that, that's not dry. If you can peel this up, break it loose, you're not going to be able to burn this. This is probably 60% moisture content, even though it's been down all these years. Yeah, look at that. That's just water. When it rains, this just soaks up like a sponge. You can't use this. Now, for the old Franklin wood stove that I used, my heat exchanger, this did fine, burned right up. The nice thing about this in the heat exchanger that I built was it actually slowed the burn down. It was really good because I was burning wood so fast that I needed to slow it down. I didn't need a lot of heat. I needed a slower burn. So there's another example over here that I'm going to show you. I would love to get this log down, this tree down, because it's so unsafe. But I don't think anybody comes down here but me anyways. So you'll see here that this tree is falling over. I would love to get that down. It'd be a simple little cut. It would fall. I mean, it's dangerous. Don't get me wrong. Don't get underneath that tree. But again, you can see that it's a sponge. The bark's gone. There's nothing repelling the water. So, yep, I can feel it. It's just wet. This cannot be used. Now I'm going to go back over to the house and I want to show you what I'm talking about. As you know, I get my firewood from individuals that are cutting down trees. So somebody will post on the free stuff app. And I get notifications all the time, says, hey, I cut down a tree, come get it. It's all cut up in logs, or sometimes it's not cut up in logs. Sometimes they want you to cut down trees, but I'm not going to do that because I'm afraid that I'd break something on their property and then they want to charge me for it. So a while back, someone posted it on free apps. They had firewood laying on the ground. So I went over there and this stuff looked great. It looked dry. Didn't see anything wrong with it. Of course, it was laying on the ground. She said, it's been here about 2 years. Now, here's the thing. It was laying on a gravel. Well, here in this area, they gravel their yards. Not sure why they do that, but that's what I guess so they don't have to cut it. So they gravel the yards. So the whole yard looks like a driveway. Which also means on these big slopes that we have, the water would drain underneath the rocks and down underneath the log. So I'm looking at it, man, this stuff looks wonderful. It just looks so dry. The thing about summertime is the humidity is very high. So when you're testing firewood in the summertime, you have to take into account that humidity. I don't know how to take it into account, but it was reading 23%. I thought, well, heck, once this climate changes into the winter and fall, the humidity is going to drop, which it has. The moisture content in that firewood will drop, but it didn't. Okay, so this is the firewood I was telling you about. I got it from a lady's driveway / yard. None of it can be burned. Now you look at this and you think, man, that is such dry stuff. I mean, the bark's falling off. It meets all the criteria. It really does. The criteria kind of is, it's grayish in color. The bark is falling off. I mean, you can see the bark is just flaking off the stuff. It sounds hollow, so you take another log and you beat up it, and it sounds hollow. Hard to do with one hand. Then the last test would be, I may have missed one there, but the last test would be, then you take a moisture tester, which I have right here, and then you test it. Should be 20%. Well, this stuff isn't. It's 23%, pretty solid. There is one log here that came from that tree. The rest is from that lady's driveway. And I bet you cannot tell what it is. It's this one right here. This one's 18%, or at least its sister was. So what you do is you split the log, and then you take your moisture tester and you poke your 2 probes into it, and it tells you what the moisture level is in it. What had happened is my guess, just like that log I showed you up in the woods, it's become a sponge. It's just soaking up water. And the thing is when you pick it up, it just looks so dry and perfect. It looks perfect, but it's not. When you split it open, you see that it is kind of flaking away in the center. You can see this spongy stuff, I guess, is the best way to put it. And you see that it's starting to flake. Now, this does not feel like moisture like that other one does. I suspect I can save this firewood. I'm stacking it up. I'm setting it over there. I'm putting a tarp over it. I bet I can get this to dry. It doesn't hurt for me to try. We've got it. I was just really hoping that we could use this. I thought it would be dry. Okay, so now I have a piece of wood from that oak tree, the one I just showed you, this one here. I split this one, and you can see that it looks dry. It looks like, I don't know, straw. It just breaks. It's very, I don't know, dry. Whereas this one, as I was showing you, has all that rot in there, I guess, for lack of a better word. And that rot is what soaks things up. Now, there is potential for this log to dry out. That rot, it does not take in the whole log. You can see that there is spots in here that is drier. That's not rotten. That is usable firewood. My guess is what's happening is this rot has soaked up wood, and so the rest of the log is trying to suck that water in. You got to think about how plants die and live. A tree or a plant or anything takes water from the root and sucks it up into the tree. Well, that's what is happening, is the tree, the log, the wood is trying to suck that moisture into it. So I do believe this is savable. But that tree out there that you saw, there's no way that's going to be savable. You just can't do it. Now, not all wood is the same. I can't speak for everything. But walnut, hickory, and oak do work the same. Now, the reason I say that is because this is sycamore. Sycamore looks like a sponge. It looks as bad as this rot. Right there. Hopefully you can see that. And this dried really fast. That's the thing about different kinds of woods. Oak is very dense, very hard wood, so it takes a long time to dry. Sycamore isn't, it's still considered a hardwood, but it isn't quite as dense as oak and birch and hickory. Softwoods like cedar and pine, you're not even supposed to use in these new stoves. Well, the reason is because it's very sappy, has a lot of water in it, and that sap doesn't necessarily dry. The wood will dry, but the sap is still there. And so when you burn the sap, it turns back into water and goes up in your chimney and sticks inside your chimney. It causes a fire in your chimney. You know what a softwood is they usually have needles on them all year round. They're called evergreens. Whereas hardwood, the leaves shed off of it. Now, for example, poplar. When I cut a poplar a while back, it fell over. I had a lot of people telling me that was a softwood. It's considered a hardwood because it has leaves and it sheds its leaves. So I hope it can inspire you to take a look at your dream. Thanks for watching.